Bloodstar Beast. He's a masterful feast. Okay, so a couple of changes. I'm going to keep my HUD off and see how that goes. And I had sound effects turned off because sitting next to this annoying old hunter bell and didn't want to listen to ringing while I was setting up the stream. But it was such a nice tableau and a wonderful place to start today's video. So welcome. This is part 4, I believe, of my solo playthrough of Bloodborne for Elucium Academy. Jesse and I had a playthrough planned, but since we've had some PC problems with some corrupted files and just PCs working in general, so we're trying out this YouTube stream from the PlayStation 4. And for now, it'll just be me and chat, of course. Today we're taking on the Bloodstar Beast, and let's kill some beasties that are hanging out in the boonies. Really well disguised. Let's see where I am at souls. 6,000 is a pretty good amount of souls. I'm going to see if I can ratchet that up to, I think, 11k. And we will see if we can get another level out before we take on the beast. So let's talk a little bit about the old Bloodstar Beast. Interesting boss fight. So some things we know about Old Yharnam. Obviously, Old Yharnam is a scene of a really sinister tragedy, plot by the church. From what we know, if we are to take the church at their word, then there was a blood disease in Old Yharnam. Ashen blood. This disease seems to be characterized, based on what was used to treat it, as some sort of poison. Perhaps a poison that was laced into the blood, concocted intentionally by the Healing Church. Perhaps not. Perhaps an actual disease. It's a simple mutation of the Beastly Scourge. But what we're... Oh, there's my Scuttle Boy. There he is. Hey, man. Hey, man. Just regular old shards. Anyway, what we know from the description on the antidote, which we find quite a lot of here in Old Yharnam, is that these are used to counteract poison and also used to treat ashen blood, the baffling sickness that ravaged Old Yharnam long ago. Baffling sickness is an interesting way to phrase it. These tablets only provide short-term relief, so they don't actually treat it. The ashen blood ailment eventually triggered the spread of the Beastly Scourge. Now, an antidote is an ailment, or is a treatment for an ailment, and I think that this implies that there's some link between poison and how poison interacts with either ashen blood, or maybe how poison informs the ashen blood disease, because that baffling part, I think, is the interesting observation. People don't know where it came from. That could just be the precursor to the Beastly Plague, but there are some more sinister implications of that. It could be that the church was intentionally experimenting on Old Yharnam and was successful, but what that resulted in was a widespread and fast conversion of citizens to beasts. Now, we see that the beasts in Old Yharnam do have intelligence. However, they don't seem to communicate with us. In that cathedral, they are moaning and sort of encircling a dangling corpse that looks quite similar to this boss that we're about to fight. I have another theory about where we find this old church. It's pretty much under the entire city of Yharnam, indicating this is definitely a slum town, or at least was at one point, oldest part of Yharnam. And it sits fairly distant and underneath the Healing Church Great Cathedral. And so, like all good liturgy, we have an as above, so below, and what we have here is a blood-starved beast, and what seems to be intentional bloodletting ritual that the beasts in Old Yharnam are now conducting here in this other cathedral. And so, why don't we contrast that with what we find in the Grand Cathedral, which is Vicar Amelia. Now, Vicar Amelia, you could say, is kind of the opposite of a blood-starved beast, because she's somewhat of a higher up in the healing church. She has access to all the blood she wants. In fact, it's her blood is used predominantly for refinement and transfusion as a blood saint of the healing church. So if you could get the complete opposite of blood-starved, you have something like Vicar Amelia, who's basically blood-infused, overfed on blood, in fact. What we have here is a beast who's been let of its blood and also seems to have a subtle poison in its blood. And in fact, that reminds me, I should keep fire paper equipped, but also keep antidote equipped. Okay, now let's enter some cheat codes where we turn the HUD on and the music off before the boss fight. But what I'm going to be looking for in this first run, I'm not going to be focusing too much on trying to get him, but more like learning his patterns. I'll be focusing 1 on parrying, and 2 on sort of the design here. So the other interesting thing about the design here is that this is, there's no roof here. This has been blown away. Perhaps intentionally, with some sort of mechanism, perhaps accidentally, by the product of some sort of ritual. I'm not really sure. It could just be degradation, dilapidation, great floods, being directly under a bridge, or at the end of a canal, who knows. But it's interesting to me that there is no roof whatsoever here. Time for singing. I'm not sure about that. And here's where the terrifying music would start. Grabbed my insight there. Alright, let's see if we can master parry. Silly of me. Although that did a whole heck of a lot of damage. I think a parry should get him real good. There we go. I thought that would get him for sure. Damn it, missed my chance. That was a bad miss too. I could have shortened this next phase quite a lot. Blast. It's starting to become infectious. Gotta be more careful. I thought that would get him. Bad. But I want to get some extra bullets. It's a risky move, but I think worth it. Nice. Unfortunately, that might put us... I want him to still be in his second phase. Nice. Alright. Alright. Maybe that wasn't the best decision. I think it's time for a bit of transformed axe action. Tried to joust too close there. Safe thing to do here is use some antidote, I think. This looks like a wind-up. It is a wind-up. Use pillar cover. Nope! Heal. Get him there, get him there, get him there, got him there. Whew. And I wasn't really joking when I said, oh, okay, before I should get ahead of myself, I should heal. Whew. Okay, first try. Nice, I feel good about that. I've been practicing parrying, and also I wasn't joking when I said the cheat codes for the boss fights in Dark Souls games. It's just to make sure your HUD is on, which, you know, most people do have their HUD on, but Bloodborne's so pretty I turn it off quite a lot. And make sure your music is off, not sound effects, so not just entirely, don't mute the whole thing. You want sound effects on, but mute the music. You can always listen to it later. Alright, so let's talk a bit about the item we just found. So first, game design-wise, we've just fought this boss. For most people, we're going to struggle because we're going to meet this boss very early. Remember, on this playthrough, I've gone through Hemwick already, and got the Rune Workshop tool. I am equipped right now with both Air, which gives me more souls from Viscerals, and Lake, which gives me just a baseline physical damage reduction in all 4 of the physical areas by just plus 3%, which is pretty meaningful. And I've got all the souls and leveling that came with running through Hemwick, and so I'm at 43. So really I'm pretty over-leveled for this boss fight, but I didn't get here, struggle, stop, and then go grind, which I think turns a lot of people off in game design. Instead what I did is I did a bit of grinding early for the 10,000 blood echoes I needed to purchase the Hunter Chief emblem, went through the Cathedral Ward via the emblem, ignored Vicar Amelia, and went to the left to explore Hemwick. Then I went to the right to explore the entrance to the Unseen Village. Went entirely through Hemwick, got the rune tool, leveled up along the way, and here I am at the Bloodstarved Beast, quite well prepared. So it just goes to show you that there are lots of different routes you can take, and I think, you know, because the level design for a lot of players leads them to Bloodstarved Beast relatively early, he is very punishing. But if you can master parrying, and you've done a little bit of leveling, he's not so bad. Now the interesting other thing about the level design here, interesting to me that there's antidote behind this boss area. I think that's both a nice little level design gift, and also a reference to sort of the history of Old Yharnam. What with the poison implied to be an ash and blood sickness, and the ailment being antidote tablets. Again, we have some pretty flippin' weird statues. So it looks like old hobbled witches have long been a part of Yharnam sort of culture and tradition. Which doesn't surprise me. This is the oldest segment of Yharnam, perhaps where it all began. Now, I think as above, so below is very apt here, because we do see the two sides of the coin that is like this surreptitious liturgy at work here in the Bloodborne world of the Healing Church and what it's done to the inhabitants of Yharnam. This is sort of an origin point. We see what's happened to Old Yharnam. The church pretty much forsaked it when they fucked up and ended up genociding everyone with fire. And what we see above is a similar thing happening, only naturally as a progression of more and more horrific deeds and more the soul of man, I think, being tainted by this lust for transcendence, this want to know more than they should. The final interesting level design fact here that I want to point out is that after such a stressful boss fight, a player would perhaps assume that there would be some inner chamber, some place to go from there, some shortcut that leads back. And we don't see that here. We just see a lantern, which I'll light now. Now, in a way, we do see that, because what Miyazaki does is he instead gives us our very first chalice. Now, if we remember what Gehrman said last time we talked to him, he said if you ever find yourself down in the dumps and you're encountering beasts that are too strong because the moon looms close tonight and the night will be long, find yourself a chalice and dip down into the old labyrinth and, you know, train yourself up. So he's basically telling you to grind if things get tough. And this is the first chalice that we have after he's mentioned it. We have also found its prerequisite ritual material in the ritual blood that we found inside the other altar of Old Yarnum. Let's go ahead and read this. So first of all, just to comment on the artwork, very Eucharisty, right? Very Holy Grail, very medieval Europe chalice. Chalice is also an interesting symbol because chalice and the sword can like be said to represent the biological sexes. You know, the cup for the womb, the sword for the phallus. Ritual chalice found in the Church of the Good Chalice. So here we are in the Church of the Good Chalice. Interesting that this is the Church of the Good Chalice because this is a pretty dilapidated church. Using a ritual at the tomb altar in the Hunter's Dream to break the seal of the old underground labyrinth. Let the chalice reveal the tomb of the gods. Let blood be the hunter's nourishment, and let ye partake in communion. So this, I think, is the true communion of the church. That for those initiated, there are these otherworldly eldritch realms. Now, we're going to go back and we're going to start to look at Chalice Dungeon stuff now, but not before we explore the Upper Cathedral Ward. Because funny enough, again, keeping in with this as above, so below theme, this sort of Catholic requiem-like liturgy, we cannot go further into Upper Cathedral Ward, the above, which we can access from the Odin Chapel, until we've gone all the way below and slay the blood-starved beast. Only then can we start to climb. Now, there's a very interesting Lovecraft story. It's really small and short, and so I think for that reason it's often overlooked as an inspirative work for Miyazaki's Bloodborne. But if you go and read the Statement of Randolph Carter, it tells the story of two adventurers that determine the location of this sort of ancient, overgrown tomb with very, very large headstones, and it seems to be somehow in a pit of like gnarled roots. The grass moves weirdly, and they find out a way to break the seal of that ancient tomb and go inside. And like the terminology that's used in this story is incredibly similar to the naming convention of Bloodborne locations. So like the word charnel is used just like 4 or 5 times in this story. Hemwick Charnel Lane. The word surreptitious is used. The word uncanny is used to describe what the one person who goes into the tomb sees. Put back the seal, oh God, it's terrible, is sort of what the friend yells. But it made me think a lot of the Old Labyrinth. And the Old Labyrinth has been kind of shrouded in a lot of lore mystery. We know its function very well, sort of, but we don't really know anything about its physical properties. Like, why the heck can we access it from these tombstones here in the Hunter's Dream? And where is it accessed from in the real world, if it even can be accessed from the real world? So let's go ahead and use our first ritual altar to do a chalice ritual for the Ephemery Chalice. All we need are 2 ritual blood units, and we got those. Well, we also need 1,000 blood echoes, but we got those for days. The ritual is finished and a chalice rests upon the altar. You may now explore the dungeon. So, a thing that I find fascinating about these gravestones is that they all have different depictions of this hanging man rune, in what seems to be older and older runic inscription, which implies many generations of service to the moon presence. Many generations. I'm not going to go in there yet. first we will use some cold blood and level up. I'll also repair my weapon first, just in case. And let's look at the blood gem fortification while we're here. I think we've gotten some new ones. Nothing better there. Nothing better there. Cool. Knocking over books because I'm a bad gal. I'm a bad gal, babe. Anything new here? Ah, yes, we can now buy Henrik's stuff. So let's see, I have 7 insight. This is 6 here. Yeah, let's do it. Alright, a little bit of fashion soulsing as we read. There we go. Alright, so, if you recall in the last video, we did assist Eileen in the removal of Henrik from Odin Tomb. And, let's read what he's all about now. Hunter's hat worn by Henrik, the old hunter. The taster and old hunter Henrik was once partners with Father Gascoigne, and though they were a fierce and gallant duo, their partnership led to Henrik's tragically long life. Perhaps Gascoigne, and maybe their friendship allowing them to be more human in fighting of beasts, sort of like tipped them into this moon-scented hunter variety. Henrik's unique yellow garb is resistant to bolt, and would be of great help to any hunter who has inherited the onus of the hunt. Now, I think Gascoigne's stuff is resistant to fire, so they are sort of a dynamic duo. Kind of a cool hat, too, don't you think? Alright, so same description for first and second line, and third one as well. We'll put it on just to see how it looks. Same here. And same here. Henrik's garb does look pretty badass, I'm not gonna lie. However, I am a fan. Actually, let's check out some Black Church garb. Nah. Too lanky for Black Church garb. I am a fan of Gascoigne's garb. And the Charred Hunter gloves as well. Now let's do some comparison real quick. I think I like Henrik's hunter trousers. So now we've got going Gascoigne's attire, Henrik's hat, Charred Hunter gloves, and Henrik trousers. Let's do a comparison here, though. Yeah. More physical defense is not bad, though. But I do like thrust defense being higher than it would be otherwise. Actually, Gascoigne's trousers are great, except the bolt. Yeah, let's keep the bolt resistance. Alright, so now let us go explore the Upper Cathedral Ward. Water, so delicious. Alright, so I think I've used a blood vial, which means I can take another one.
Hello. You've come for my...
I've come for that blood, baby.
Oh, good. Come close, dear. I'm always happy to help.
Wonderful. Let's take out our pebbles. And for this section, we will certainly make use of some shining coins. Let's break some of the furniture.
Yeah.
Okay, she hasn't changed yet.
I've no time, what? I can't stand.
He hasn't changed either. I think Eileen's probably still down in the chapel. I'm not sure if the time of day has changed, if that's a less, like, bright red. It kind of seems that way, but that could just be a trick of the mind. Oh shit, did I forget to level up? I did. I'm a fool, you know. I'm a fool for fashion. Every time I look at new clothes, I forget what I was doing. And just have a good time trying on a new hat or two. Ooh, and I think this might actually trigger some Hypogean jail as well. But we're gonna have to check that out, aren't we?
What is it you do? Very well, let me...
One level. I think I actually want more stamina, weirdly.
Farewell, good
I'm gonna
hunter.
bring stamina and vitality to 25 now. Let us awaken above ground. Alright, so on the way to Cathedral Ward, there are actually some really, really tasty lore items to discover. So we're going to take that detour first. Into the upper rafters of Odin Chapel, because any good chapel or cathedral in a Miyazaki game is going to have some upper rafters to it. We've got the good chalice from below, and now we can above go. Let's clear out some chests first. Let's kill some old men. 1 million quicksilver bullets. Some nice moonlighting. Oh, that's fascinating. I wonder if this is a graphical thing, like a graphical bug, or if this is intentionally reflecting in the moonlight. I think that might be a mirror. And look, there is the Hunter's Workshop, huh? That might even be where the moon hangs in the sky in the Hunter's Dream. That's actually really, really cool. That's got to be intentional, right? That reflective material. I think that's the thing that's reflecting the moonlight, or I guess fading sunlight at this time of night. And what is it in here? Let us see. A rune. Communion. And what did it tell us about communion in the last place that we read it, which was the Thumru Chalice description? It told us that we can partake in communion by conducting a chalice ritual and breaking the seal of the underground labyrinth, therefore traveling to it. Imbibing in blood in that labyrinth, too. A training ground. Kind of terrifying when you think about it. So communion gives you more capacity for blood. Notable that the other two runes are described as a Carol rune. This one is a secret symbol left by Carol. Runesmith of Bergamort. Several runes relate to blood, including communion, which raises the maximum number of blood vials one may carry. This rune represents the healing church and its ministers. Blood ministration is, of course, the pursuit of communion. Interesting. The symbol's very interesting too. Looks like a bleed, a droplet, an eye in the middle of the droplet, perhaps the expulsion of ovum from the uterus. Let's give these boys a bone, huh? Okay. Now before we cross this bridge, let's jump out a window. Did I miss my opportunity? Is it this side? It is. Thank you, messenger. This grants us an overlook to the Cathedral Ward Plaza and an alternate route. Reinforced with some sandbags. Interesting. To the upper Odin Chapel. Now, where does this lighting originate from, let us ask? Perhaps this window? And the way that the curtains hang? I believe so. Could also be my hand lantern. It is. This is just ambient lighting then. Formless Oeden. A very important rune. Alright, so first and foremost, kind of recalling a lot of the design, or some of the design element here, which is the line piercing the eye inside of the droplet, which could look a little bit like an eye upside down, like with the lens in the front and the cornea in the back. The cornea being the place where the line is extending from. This kind of also looks like an eye. It looks somewhat like the bottom half of an eye crying. Also looks like, in my opinion, sperm penetrating an ovum. Because Odin is all about fertility. And Odin searches for fertility every chance he gets. So let's read about Formless Odin. Secret symbol left by Carol, runesmith of Bergenworth. So these are both secrets. I think implying that one must have access to the good chalice before they partake in communion and interact with Odin as a result. The Great One Odin, lacking form, exists only in voice and is symbolized by this rune. Those who memorize it enjoy a larger supply of quicksilver bullets. Human or no, the using blood is a medium of the highest grade, and the essence of the formless Great One, Odin. Both Odin and his inadvertent worshippers surreptitiously seek the precious blood. I think what they mean by inadvertent worshipper is that sort of like the Beast Plague, unexpectedly being a result of over-imbibing in blood. Another result of imbibing in blood is coming into contact with Oeden, whose medium is blood. Mechanically, getting more quicksilver bullets means that there's more in our, like if we're, number one, drinking more blood by partaking in communion, which we are mechanically here, our max vials are up, and the more blood we are able to drink, the more our blood is tainted by quicksilver, and the more Odin grants us to do with our blood. The more potent our blood becomes, the holier as a medium it becomes. I think Odin is almost like a chemical synthesis kind of guy who's looking to enhance the grade of the holy medium and try to find fertility. Okay, so we'll probably use the quicksilver bullet one. Ah, and the best messenger hat. Potheads. Accessory adorned by naive messengers. The messengers wear the urns filled with incense that ward off beasts on their head upside down, suggesting a predilection to the dark. They like dark, do they? I think their mouths, interestingly, look like humanity sprites sometimes. That's just an idle speculation I have. But if they are predilected to the dark, this might lend some credence to that theory. The inhabitants of the stump love hats. Give them hats and let them be happy like babies. Cool. Thank you, kind stranger. Let's take a look at the architecture for a bit. Sorry, I know architecture bores some people, but it's important. So these just look to be like your typical gargoyles, little Romanian demons, but very small. Interesting that they had the Messenger Urn Festival. Let us drop down. I imagine that hurt me. Oh, you hear that thumping around? Perhaps you can only hear it here because it is. I want to just point out how good the positional audio is right here. I haven't gone out there and seen if Bloodstarved Beast triggers the Bagman running around the streets, but architecturally, this, on the other side of this wall, would be the corner, because here we have the wall of the building extending like that, and then extruding like this to create a wall and a corner on the outside, which is where we would confront the Bagman. Now, if his AI is responding to our footsteps and our presence here, you can faintly hear hulking footsteps. Now, this could be a long draw from the Thumerian Watchman, but I think that this is a Bagman indication. We'll check that after we explore the Upper Cathedral Ward, or at least attempt to. You are dead still? Yes, good. And let us run across the bridge and meet our foe on even ground. There we go. Delicious vials of blood. Give me your fluids. I want all your fluids. Thank you for the ambush tip. That's right. Didn't account for me arching my back there, did you? Let's take the gunman first, huh? Give me back my blood. This is why I want more stamina. I love swinging max around. Hey man, I'm just getting real lucky with my animations. Second blood tinge gemstone. That's rewarding. Also denoting that the tinge of blood is perhaps increasing as we venture into the more secret areas of the Cathedral Ward, towards the Upper Cathedral Ward, and also the sabotaged entrance to the Once Hunter's Workshop. I'd rather deal with a sword man than a Gatling gun man any day. Hulking Brute. That one really gets you. But they big, so they fall. Give me that sweet fluidity, thank you. Alright, so I think this is as far as that level goes. So I need to find a ladder, I believe. Oh man, a Scuttlebones is gonna trick me into falling off, isn't it? I don't want to be tricked into falling off. I think there should be a ladder here. Yep, there it is. Now let's just take a look. They are making no real attempt to hide what's down there, except for maybe the dense layer of fog, but this tree is a stark enough attention drawer that an observant player will notice that there's something down there well rendered enough to go to. I love this design too because it shows you that there's something down, but just urges you to keep moving up. Ah, we have a note. The sky and the cosmos are one. The choir. It's like a little choir pamphlet. An indication, perhaps very genteel, that outer space is the universe, or that the cosmos term is not actually a reference to the universe, but in fact a reference to the nightmarish universe Mother Cos has created. The cosmos. Some curdled blood. Flamethrower man, wearing a plague doctor mask, probably full of incense. So I think that the fact that incense wards off beasts is interesting. I think it could just reference how beasts are creatures that more rely on their animal instincts like scent, but it could also be a reference to the plague doctor's sort of bit of fake medicine that was employed during the Dark Age, during the spread of the bubonic plague, which we see Eileen wearing and we see some of these old fellows wearing as well. And those masks, they're conical because a lot of plague doctors who really weren't doctors, they were just basically people who were paid to go in and tally the dead and remove them on behalf of, like, the church, basically. And so essentially they were like census workers and dead body collectors. They weren't really there to treat the plague. They were there to catalog it and remove it. And so they had a number of superstitions, and one of them was that the smell is the way that the plague spread. And smell is certainly an indication that there is plague, but it doesn't necessarily prevent the plague to give yourself some good-smelling incense. So they would fill their beaks with incense, sometimes even lighting it a fire, so that the smell of miasma surrounding the plague wouldn't overwhelm them. But they also believed that that gave them protection, when really it didn't really give them protection at all. We now know. So I think that maybe there's some subtle suggestion that incense warding off beasts is not as effective as we might think. However, the places where there is lots of incense do seem to not be surrounded by beasts. For instance, when the old beggar comes to the church, he doesn't even go inside the church, you know, and the church is filled with incense. Let's get ourselves a badge. Ah, yes, the Radiant Soul Hunter badge. Before we read that, go into this incense urn-filled room, resist the urge to destroy the pots, and encounter this very prominent door that is locked. Alright, bottleneck reached. Go out for a bit of fresh air, have our attention drawn again to the tree. And that's the area where we fought the Tonitrus-wielding and rifle spear-wielding duo, leading to Yahar'gul. Alright, so before we descend into the streets of Yharnam underneath Cathedral Ward, which is kind of a stressful descent, I'm not going to lie, we're going to head back to the Hunter's Dream, read the Radiant Hunter's Sword Badge, and I might even pick up the Mock Ludwig's Holy Blade. Also, I'm not sure what our Blood Echoes will look like. I'm not sure how good that run is for leveling, but we'll see right now. It's not great. I think also changed my mind about my hat choice. I don't like the brown leather clashing with the black. Alright, so I think next time let's read the Sword Hunter badge first. So we have seen the Sword Hunter badge. If we remember, we got this badge from killing the Cleric Beast. The Radiant Sword Hunter badge shares the same design, but this one glows and is relatively larger. One of the badges crafted by the Healing Church, the Radiant Sword indicates the heirs to the will of Ludwig. These hunters, also known as Holy Blades, are what remains of an ancient line of heroes that date back to a very early age of honor and chivalry. So essentially, this is the infantry, these are the knights. The infantry and the clerics, the knights and the paladins. Infantry and clerics, knights and paladins. We know them really as executioners, because that's kind of what paladins were, for being real. It doesn't matter whose god you're serving if your primary goal is to go and kill people, right? So this is an interesting one. It's going to give us some wonderful, wonderful weaponry. Alright, so some things that we are going to check on before advancing to the Hypogean jail. Number one, we are going to see if there is patches dialogue in the streets underneath the Upper Cathedral Ward. We might even try getting into the real-world Hunter's Dream at that time, too. Sort of looping that around. Then we're going to explore Hypogean Jail, and then I think we'll head into the Chalice Dungeons next episode. wow. Boy, do I need a lot of blood echoes for that fellow. So I do want the rifle. I already have the flame sprayer. I do want the blade, and I do want the prospector's outfit. This will require very many souls indeed. So I think some leveling will be in order. Now, a great place to level is Yahar Gul in the Hypodian jail, baby. Fantastic place to level. Real quick, let's equip our third rune. I think I'll take Formless Odin for the Quicksilver increase. And let's replace our Blood-Tinged Gemstone. Ah, yes, way better, from 1.8 to 12.6. Yes, please. Don't think we got any better ones here, but I'm just going to double check. Let's repair. I don't want to fortify yet because I want to wait to have the Holy Blade before I fortify. Oh, and of course, the very small thing, which is I gotta give my little babies their special pot hat. You heard me. I'm giving pots to children. There you go, little buddies. I know you have a predilection for the dark. Now, I think that there's also some interesting storytelling going on here in just how the bath prices increase. This is something about the game design of Bloodborne, and I think also Dark Souls, that people don't often touch on, but I think it's kind of ingenious, which is that your items start costing a lot more the higher level you get. And so it allows the game designer to basically use the costs of items to limit how much you can rely on them, and also indicate when you might start to grind. Like, the weapons went from being, on average, 1 to 3,000, and the clothes 1 to 6,000, all the way to 20,000 for the Holy Blade, 10,000 for the rifle, and 6,000 apiece, and then 18,000 for the main garb. So, the game has given us Upper Cathedral Ward, Vicar Amelia, the Chalice, the first Chalice dungeons, and the Hypogean Jail to explore at this point. So, like 3 different farm routes. It's telling us, I think, with the item prices that we must farm now. And so that's what we'll do. But I'll demonstrate how we can farm while also exploring new content, and that's the beauty of this game, methinks. Alright, y'all, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back to do that exploration then.